Hi guys, my name is Shireen Smith and I am with Creative Wood Parties Inner Circle, and that is my private group where they learn all sorts of techniques and tricks and tips from building the signs to building projects to painting the projects. They have a direct link to me, so if you're interested in the Inner Circle, check us out. I also have a free group, Creative Parties with Wood, that is free, that you can pop into as well. So one of the biggest struggles that I hear every time that I'm in these groups with wood sign makers or Cricut wood sign makers is stenciling. Stenciling is a challenge for many, many people, and it was for me at one point. So I'm going to show you how to get a perfect stencil every time. And once you learn the technique, you can easily teach your audience or your painters to do the same thing. I do not use vinyl. It doesn't matter what kind of material you're using. What is important is the technique that you're using. I've heard people put Mod Podge down. They spray paint first. They do this. They do that before. You don't need all that. You just need to know the technique. And this is what I teach my class. And 99% of the time, they have a perfect stencil. If they don't, they weren't listening to me very well. All right, so the great thing about this video is you can rewind it and listen to me again. They can't. So I use cardstock stencils, just like this. And this is a heavyweight tag board that I get on Amazon. And this is all I use in my classes, is this heavyweight cardstock. It's cheap. It's 27 cents a sheet. Sometimes I get 2 stencils out of it. But think about that. I'm making stencils for people, for hundreds of people, for 27 cents each. Pretty cheap. Toss them in the trash when you're done. And nothing pulls off your board because it's not sticky. You're going to need a wood sign. You're going to need some painter's tape. These are my supplies I use in class 2, and these are makeup sponges. I get them at Walmart. Do not use the dollar store ones. They're too mushy. I rinse them out, reuse them until they're just mush, and I toss them in the garbage. So you can get, a pack of, I want to say 100 for like $4 or $5 at Walmart on this. And then I use a paper plate to do my stenciling. And then, of course, paints. My paint of choice is simple latex, acrylic, or craft paint. Does not have to be chalk. Doesn't have to be fancy. Okay? So I'm going to tilt you down so you can see what I'm doing. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my stencil where I want it. I'm going to center my stencil up. And then I'm going to tape it down in a couple of places. You don't need to tape it down like it's going to fly off your board for some reason. And I tell my class, I want you to tape it in one place so that you can lift it up and look under it. Okay? So we're going to start with the teacup, and I'm going to do a light gray on the teacup because I am going to Mod Podge over that with something. So I am going to just pick any sponge. They're stained. It's not that they have paint on them. They're stained. You dip the fat end in, and it looks really wet, just like that. Pounce it off, and now it looks matte. And then when you come over here to your board, you're going to go up and down, and you're going to be gentle. So not a lot of pressure. So down, 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 down. And this is what it looks like. So you can almost see the white through my gray. And I want that because if I have too much paint on this, it's going to go under my stencil. If I push too hard, I push paint under my stencil. So it's more of a layering process than it is. And see, here I can pounce off it in the middle because I've got lots of room to do so. Just up and down, up and down, up and down. And then once I get most of my paint off, I go around to my edges. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Not hard. I'm being very gentle. I always tease my class, don't stencil angry. So you don't want to be slamming your sponge down. You don't want to be pushing. But you want to push hard enough that you're not going to be here till 10 o'clock at night. Okay, this is what the teacup looks like. Stenciled. See how pretty and crisp those lines are? That's what you're looking for. So let's go to the little bit of the more difficult. Let's go to these little swirls. I'm going to do a dark gray. Ugh, that was way too much paint. All right, so I'm going to use my same sponge because I had a light on that. Now I'm going to do a little darker gray up here. And again, most of it is back off my sponge. Especially the smaller the font, the more you want it off. And just gently up and down. Up and down, up and down. And I don't want to get any on my gray, so I'm going to put a little piece over the top. Up and down, up and down. All right. Now, this is what we have. Okay, so see all the places I missed? I don't know if you can see that or not. So here's what you do with that. Now, you make sure that you really have very little paint. You're going to press a little harder, not much harder, just enough to get in to the finer line. But not hard. And this takes practice. You've got to, you know, get a board, cut some stencils, cut some fine ones, and play with it. Find your pressure. And even if you can just get a faint line going, you can also come back with a little brush and touch it up. Our tendency when we get into rough wood or we get into a little fine line is I'm going to press really hard. I'm going to force the paint in there. And that is what you do not want to do. Because when you press hard, I mean pressing hard, and you can see when I pressed hard, see what the paint did on the edge of this? See how it spooged out a little bit? So I don't want to press hard. I want to press a little harder if I'm looking to get into a line that's giving me grief. I just need to get my faint line, and then I can just touch it with a little brush if I need to. Same thing if you have a rough spot in your board. Our tendency is I'm going to press harder. I'm going to force that paint in there, and you do not want to do that. And see, I almost have no paint on this. So when I'm pressing harder, I'm not pushing paint underneath because I almost don't have any paint. Okay? And now we're going to do the words, which is turquoise. Again, I'm going to use the same one because I hardly have any gray left on that. Again, pouncing it off, up and down. And this one, you're going to see some roughness in my wood. And see how that paper kind of lifts up? It's okay. As long as I'm going up and down. Stick your finger on it if you feel it. You need to. And you don't need as much paint as you think you do to get a nice coverage. And you can always go back over it should you need to. Okay? So there's no need for the Mod Podge. There's no need for anything else on your wood boards. And if you're doing vinyl, same technique. Just because it sticks to the board does not mean it won't bleed under your stencil. And that's one of the misconceptions of stenciling with vinyl. And why people use vinyl is because they think, well, if I use vinyl, it won't bleed. And it will. Your boards are rough. And it will bleed on a smooth board too. So it doesn't even matter what board you're using. I've got some old wood out there that I stencil, and I have to use less paint the older the wood. All right, so I'm going to show you what this looks like. Just like that. See, no bleeding even with the little bitty fine lines. That's how you roll. So this has been Stenciling 101 with Shireen Smith from Creative Wood Parties Inner Circle. And if you enjoyed this, you'll find more information about Creative Wood Parties at plumcraftcrazy.com. And just look for the Inner Circle button. All right? Look forward to talking to you.